Did you know that a student that has won a scholarship can lose the money? Most of the time, when a student wins a scholarship, they won't have the money taken away from them. But there are select few instances that a student can very well lose those coveted dollars and maybe even not be able to get them back. So, in today's video, I want to share with you reasons that students can lose scholarships so that you and your student can make sure that this does not happen. Now, make sure you hit subscribe because every week we release a new video on a new strategy on how to work towards a debt-free degree. Hey there, my name is Jocelyn Pearson, founder of the Scholarship System, and I got to where I secured 6 figures in scholarships, graduate debt free, and we've helped families secure well over $10.5 million to date. So, scholarships, this is my bread and butter. So, we have seen a lot of wins. Fortunately, we have not seen too many losses, but I want to make sure that we are covering this because that is a big hit. After doing all that work, after being selected to win the dollars, we do not want to lose this money, especially for something silly. So, there are different types of scholarships. I'm going to talk about those, and we're going to talk about the most common reasons that students lose scholarships. But if you're wondering, well, how do we get scholarships that we can even worry about losing, then make sure you check out my free training, my 6 steps to securing scholarships. And I will include a link to that in the description, as well as somewhere here on the screen. You can go to thescholarshipsystem.com/free training as well. So make sure you check that out after today's video, because even if your student already has received some scholarships, that means that they can even receive more. Okay, let's get into how we can lose them. So first and foremost, of course, if a student receives a scholarship through a university or an institution and they decide to transfer, they will lose that money. Now, they may not have to pay it back, which is good news, but that scholarship, if it's institution specific, then it of course will not follow them to somewhere else. We have an entire video about transfer students that we can link to inside Debt-Free Degree Lab. We have a whole lesson about this. There are schools that do offer merit-based scholarships for a transfer student, but they are less common. So this is something to think about before transferring. Now, another reason that a student may lose an institution-based scholarship, so one that was given through a university, could be disciplinary action. So if a student receives some kind of disciplinary action, maybe they were caught drinking, plagiarizing, maybe they were written up for some reason and it was very serious, they might be taken to a board. Oftentimes universities will have like a student board of conduct, and they can decide on the punishment. And one of those could be that they lose their scholarship. This can be also if they are caught or arrested outside of the university. Those kind of disciplinary actions can result in them losing money. So if your student has received scholarships, they already should be behaving, but it is all the more reason to follow the rules and follow the laws. Now, another reason that students often lose scholarships is, and this is not just for university-focused scholarships, but also private scholarships, is simply that they don't meet the criteria anymore. So if you've watched any of our scholarship videos, you will see that there is such a wide array of criteria, of application requirements. It can vary, whether it's GPA requirements, school decision, or school enrollment requirements. It could be whether they have to be full-time or they have to have a certain number of credit hours. Maybe it's based on their major and they decide to change their major. So there are so many different little nuances that go into each individual scholarship that makes a student eligible, which also means that these nuances can make them ineligible if we no longer meet them. Now, if this was a one-time scholarship, it probably won't matter. But if it is one that renews year after year, then this can come into play for sure. Another big one is if their GPA falls below a certain level, or if they are no longer under the the academic performance levels that are required, especially at a university. So maybe it says that in order to keep this scholarship, you must maintain a 3.0 or higher, or sometimes a 2.5 or higher. So if a student falls below that, they may be bumped down to a lower scholarship, or they may just lose it totally. Now, if it's through the university and they lose it because of their grades, sometimes they may be able to get it back. and they would have to have bring their GPA back up for a certain amount of time. But a lot of times, once it's lost, it is lost. So another example, sometimes it's actually that they give a student a grace period before they take it away. So it's not that they lose and have to get it back, but it's that they give them a time period to get the grades up before they take that money away. So through the university, we definitely want to communicate with the financial aid department if your student is no longer meeting criteria as far as GPA. Talk to them about, hey, have your student come up with a game plan. What do we have in place in order to make sure that that grade comes back up, and see if that can happen in that grace period that they give your student. We have a video all about financial aid appeal letters for bad grades. So we'll link to that somewhere here on the screen as well as in the description. All the important resources will be in the description. Now, I received a scholarship that was renewable up to 4 years, and I had to submit something every year to prove that I still met the criteria. So for them, it was I had to be a full-time student, so it was 12 credit hours or higher. I had to have a certain GPA, so I had to maybe include my GPA, a copy of my transcripts, maybe not an official one, but an unofficial one showing my GPA. And they actually, I want to say they may have even required some kind of letter for the donor that submitted or that contributed the scholarship I received. This organization specifically, they had dozens of scholarships available, and so they had tons of different donors, and so they requested winners to write a thank you letter to the donor each year, and that I would do anyway. I did that even for ones that I was not required to do that for, just to give them a little update of my life and to let them know that their money has been well used. So there's also perhaps through the financial aid office, they may check on their own whether your student still meets the criteria. It may not be something that your student has to submit, or they may have to in order to get the money year after year. But if that's the case, then they may hold back dispersing any money to your student if they don't meet the criteria. Now, one more video we'll link to in the description is our financial aid disbursement video. So we do have a video on that as well. Now, one of the common concerns I often hear is if my student changes their major, will they lose their scholarship? And oftentimes, if they change their major, they will no longer receive it, but they don't necessarily have to pay it back. So a lot of institutions, they understand students will change their major. So they won't give it any longer if it was major based. And this is why when we're talking about where to find scholarships and what topics to find them for, we tell our students, major is one of dozens of different areas that we can use to search for scholarships. So hopefully not all of our scholarships are based on major anyway. But that said, it could be, say it was a nursing scholarship and your student's no longer pursuing nursing, then they won't receive that anymore. But typically they don't have to pay it back. I would say one exception to this that I've seen is if they receive, say, a state grant, for example. So if your student is pursuing teaching and they no longer pursue that and they received either scholarship dollars or scholarship money in the sense of student loan forgiveness kind of thing, there's programs like that, and they are required to teach for X amount of years in order to receive that forgiveness or receive that money, and they change their mind, then that might be one that a student has to pay back. But I haven't seen paying back actually, with the exception of a teaching grant. So comment below, did your student lose a scholarship, or do you know someone that's lost a scholarship? If so, did they lose it? What reason, if you don't mind sharing? Or do you know of any stories? That way we have more cautionary tales for families to make sure that they're aware of so that we don't lose these coveted dollars. And again, remember that even if, say, they lost one scholarship, they can continue applying for scholarships all the way until they graduate from college. So make sure you check out that free training, my 6 steps to securing scholarships. I'll give you a list on how to find those legitimate scholarships, how to identify them. So that way, when your student is continuing to apply, they are spending their time on legitimate scholarships with less competition. You can find that link again in the description below. So just a very quick recap. Students can lose scholarship dollars. I know that is so disheartening to hear. Hopefully, though, this won't happen to your student, but if it does, we want to make sure, or I should say, if your student receives scholarships, we want to make sure that we don't fall into any of these buckets. So just a quick recap again, remember, it can be that either they transfer, anything through the school will not follow them if they transfer unless it's through the government. That's a different story. If they maybe change their majors, if they no longer meet criteria such as GPA, credit hours, etc. These are all reasons. And of course, also I mentioned if they have disciplinary actions against them, that is often a reason to lose the funding. All right, if you have any questions, please comment below. We check every comment and reply to any of the questions, so don't hesitate, and I will see you in the next video.